Psalms chapter 84 and verse 10. For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. So one day in the kingdom of heaven is better than 1,000 of your best days on this side, man. Let me repeat that again. One single day in the kingdom of heaven is better than 1,000 of your best days on this side, man. Okay? Where things were better for you. Moments that you can reminisce on and say, yeah, that was a good day. The kingdom of heaven blows it out the park, man. It blows it out the water. Just one day. Not to mention, the Heavenly Father, He's going to stretch out the time. He's going to expand the time so you can enjoy your immortality. You can enjoy your life. And the Lord said in Wisdom of Solomon, He created the Israelite man to be an image of his own eternity, man. We're going to be a likeness of his own eternity, man. We're going to be many most highs, man. We're going to be many most highs. Okay? God's on earth under Yahweh Shemiah Shah.
I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
And also what's going to make us gods? These laws, statutes, and commandments, and us judging by the laws, statutes, and commandments, but also these laws being in our inward parts, making us those perfect judges. Not to mention, we experience these different reincarnations in this wicked flesh, so we know how to judge the flesh. We know how to judge this body because we've been in this body many times. Okay? But once again, the kingdom of heaven is going to be patterned after the mind of Yahweh Shemiah Shah, man. A righteous paradigm.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Kakudash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds. In the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. All right, and what I want to get into today, is dealing with, all right, the rich, okay, and the poor, okay, because as you go into this society, especially American society, it's been divided, by race, mostly, black and white, all right, so-called white people, so-called, black people, all right, so-called Native Americans, and, so-called, Latinos, okay. But what we have to understand now, all right, with these devils, it's all about the rich and the poor unto them. Okay? There was a time, all right, when these everyday Edomites enjoy particular perks and privileges, where those perks and privileges are being snatched away, okay, by the super rich of their own people. Okay? And you everyday Edomites, are behind. All right, you haven't got the memo. Okay, you still here voting, for Trump. Okay, you still have this "Make America Great Again" and this all these mantras that you're saying, but you have no idea, okay, that the rich have not included you, okay, within the blessing that they're planning, to establish within this new world order. Okay, you're not including. This is why you're seeing the middle class, okay, being destroyed, man, being ripped apart. Okay, because in the New World Order, there's only the super rich, okay, the elites and the super rich, all right, and the poor of all people. Everyone else is just going to be lumped up, okay, within the poor. You see, because even in the New World Order, all right, you Edomites are lumped up, okay, with the rest of everyone else as the poor, okay, in this devil's agenda. And that's why you see things trending the way that they are. But they still have you fooled. They got Trump, put in front of you, okay, as if he's going to bring back, okay, the American, middle class, the Edomite, pretty much Trump is an illusion of them bringing back, okay, Edomite privilege in America, okay, that's gone. Those days are over. You see, it only gets worse from here. All right. But Trump is the perfect candidate, to put in front of you Edomites, okay, with the illusion of getting back to some type of Edomite privilege. All right. What they call white privilege in America, man. Nah, it's over. Okay. I got a few precepts and I got a video and some things I looked up on the chat. Okay. Because what you people have to understand, there were certain policies that created the middle class, going back to the Roosevelt days and during the time of Reagan, those things began to be undone. And under Reagan, that's where you will have a corporate takeover. Okay, was you going to get into those things? So let's go here. Um, let's go to Sirach. All right, it's the book of Sirach, chapter 13, and verse 15. It said, "Every beast loveth his like, and every man loveth his neighbor. All flesh consorteth according to kind, and a man will cleave to his like." Okay? So what you have to understand what we're seeing today, because in general, you know, um, even the beasts of the field, they cleave unto their like. The hyenas with the hyenas, the leopards with the leopards. Okay, all beasts cleave unto their like, you know, the beavers, whatever, they cleave to their like. Okay? And you had, Edomites, okay, that was in one big lump, you see, within American culture, okay, all the Edomites dwelt amongst the Edomites, you see, but over the years, what have you seen happen? All right, the super wealthy of the Edomites have separated themselves from the rest of the Edomites. Okay, they don't even consider the lower tier Edomites their like anymore. Okay, and it says, "What fellowship have the wolf with the lamb? So the sinner with the godly. What agreement is there between the hyena and the dog? And what peace between the rich and the poor?" Okay, and see, these super rich Edomites are like wolves, man, and they look at everyone else as lambs. Okay, as a prey, something to prey on. Capitalism is a predatory system, okay, where the rich get richer and the poor get poor, and they stay poor. Okay, you see, it says, what agreement between the hyena and the dog, and what peace between the rich and the poor. Okay, and this is the social class, all right, that the elites have formed, all right, the rich and the poor. You see, in this new world order, this one world government, this one world religion, okay, this one world currency, there's going to be two social classes, man, the super rich and the super poor. And they show you in these movies, man, the Hunger Games, okay, you had the elite, okay, with just feasting and luxury, okay, and then you had everyone else in these districts, okay, and they allow you, they had these games that you'll play for their entertainment. Okay, somebody representing each district. You see, so you had the rich and the poor, Elysium. All right, they show you what the rich, the super rich and the poor. Okay, all these different movies where they show you that there's an extremely rich and an extremely poor. That's a society that these devils, okay, want to bring forth and manifest, man. You see, and you Edomites are still behind talking about MAGA and Republican and I'm a Democrat. And, no, okay, and that's why you have all these people that was MAGA, all right, are pissed because they voted against their own interests. Okay, and we're going to show you how they voted against their own interests. Okay, but because their hatred for Jake, and their hatred for the left, okay, you see, they voted against their own interests, man, to show you how confused they are. Okay? These people hollering MAGA, they don't have it figured out, man. Okay? Even this guy, Captain Kirk, which we're going to get in this video. Let me get this. I'm going to pull this video up. All right, it's going to go into it. But let's go here. All right, this is Proverbs 22:7. It says, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." Okay, so the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And this is the system that they want, all right, forever, man. They want people always indebted to them. Okay, this is how this man rules the earth, through debt. This is debt slavery. Okay, you're born into debt. As soon as you enter into this realm, okay, from your mother's womb, you owe these niggas, man. Okay, and that's the type of system that they run. All right, because debt, all right, creates what? The need to for labor, and now you have to labor to get out of debt. Okay, so let's go here. Got this video. Yep. So this whole, make America great again, it was a big scam. It was a big magic trick. All right. And you people fell for it. Okay. So let's go here. Quick video, about 7 minutes. And he's gonna go into it. He's gonna break it down. So let's let it play.
America's comeback is nothing but a con job. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he was sitting under a tent that had American Comeback Tour printed in huge letters across all four sides. It was the theme of his tour of college campuses, which raises the question, come back to what? What are we, it's like the question of make America great again. Like going back to what? So, I tried to answer that question. Back in 1981, when Ronald Reagan was sworn into office, fully 2/3 of Americans were in the middle class. College was so cheap you could pay your tuition with a weekend job. Healthcare was inexpensive and widely available. Women and minorities had achieved legal, albeit not yet actual, parity with white men. And school and mass shootings were largely unknown because weapons of war were mostly banned from our streets. Now, 44 years after the beginning of the Reagan Revolution, only around half of us are in the middle class. College debt has crushed 2 generations to the point where they can't start a family or buy a house. 500,000 families have ended up homeless or bankrupt every year because somebody got sick. The Republicans are leading an effort to make it harder for women and minorities to vote or maintain employment. And with more guns than people, mass shootings are an almost daily occurrence. So it's easy to see, how over 44 years, 16% of us have fallen out of the middle class at least. And just to stay in the middle class, by the way, right now requires 2 full-time salaries, whereas you could do that in 1981 with 1 full-time salary. So it's even worse than it sounds. So it's easy to see where, you'd have young people going, what the hell? This is not the world I want. This is not the world my parents had or my grandparents. They did just fine, thank you very much. They were able to go to college without going $100,000 in debt. They were able to buy a house in their 20s with just a working person's salary. Things are, healthcare is bankrupting us. The leading cause of death among children right now is bullets. I mean, 500,000 families end up homeless or bankrupt every year because somebody got sick in their family. So kids are looking around going, what the hell? This is not right. This is not the way it should be. And then, people like Charlie Kirk come along and say, well, you're right. And life sucks. And here's my solution. So let's talk about that. How did we get that middle class to begin with? That great middle class that we had from the 1950s until really the 1990s. Where'd that come from? It started in 1933 when Franklin Roosevelt was sworn into office. First, he passed the Wagner Act, which the National Labor Relations Act, which forced employers to recognize unions when a majority of employees wanted a union. And so what happened was suddenly a middle class emerged. Unions, a third of us had unions in 1981 when Reagan was sworn into office. So, which meant 2/3 of us had the equivalent of a union job because the unions provided the wage floor, the local wage floor. So, very straightforward. The unions are the reason why, as productivity went up, wages went up from the 1930s right up until the 1980s. Now, in the 1980s, wages flattened off, but productivity continued to rise, and that's because Reagan destroyed the unions. A little over 5% of us in the private sector are unionized now. Second, FDR established the minimum wage to make sure that people who worked would never fall, full time would never fall into poverty. Well, it used to be that you could actually live on the minimum wage. I mean, in the 60s, I was working 2 minimum wage jobs. I was pumping gas at a gas station, at the Esso station, and I was washing dishes at Bob's Big Boy. And on the weekends, occasionally, or not occasionally, actually, for some time, I was DJ doing country western music. They were all, $2 and $3 an hour jobs. I mean, these were minimum wage jobs, and you could put yourself through college at productivity. If it kept up with the cost of living, it would be around $25 an hour. If it kept up with productivity, it'd be over $60 an hour right now. And then third.
So the minimum wage, is supposed to be 25, just for cost of living. You see, and you still have some places, I know down here in Mississippi, the minimum wage is $7.25, a third of cost of living. Okay. Then you have, if it kept up with the productivity, which is the profit margin of these major corporations, well, average wage should be around $60, man. Okay. You see? So what capitalism has done, it has made it, all right, and we're going to go into, all right, what they call Reaganomics, okay, which is similar to the Trump economy, because from Reagan to Trump, what we've seen is a corporate takeover, okay, to where there's been a major wealth grab, okay, by the super rich, okay, impoverished, all right, which has impoverished, okay, everyone else, okay. This thing is about the rich and the poor, okay. You Edomites, walking around with these, these Trump shirts and hats, okay. You're not in the club, all right. You're voting, okay, for your own enslavement, all right, which is gonna be a digital slave. You see, but this is just how unbalanced, okay, this devil has when it comes to the wealth distribution, okay, in America, man. So let's play some more.
FDR raised the top income tax rate to 90%, which caused CEOs to stop taking money out of their companies and start, leave the money in the company and use that to pay better wages and benefits to employees. And the top corporate tax rate was 52%. And corporations could get around that by research and development, new product rollouts, advertising, all these kind of things. Stock buybacks were illegal until 1983. So Reagan undid all that. Reagan dropped the top tax rate down to 27%. He declared war on labor unions. With regard to college, in the 1960s, or in 1981, when Reagan was sworn into office, with regard to college, 80% of the cost of tuition at state universities was paid for by the state. And 20% was what your tuition cost you. It's why tuition was inexpensive. Today, it's the exact opposite. 80% of the cost of the college education is paid for with tuition, and only 20% is covered by the state. This was one of the great innovations of the Reagan Revolution, and it's why so many people have so much student debt. Healthcare was inexpensive when Reagan came into office because hospitals and insurance companies were required to be nonprofits. The Reagan Revolution blew that up. I mean, so, well, on taxes, he says he wants to replace the progressive income tax with a 10% flat tax. He called unions cartels and celebrated teachers losing the right to unionize. On college tuition, he opposed any plan to reduce student debt or increase federal or state funding for higher education, calling free college a bribe. And on healthcare, he completely opposed any kind of universal healthcare. In fact, he called our Veterans Administration an example of failed government-run healthcare. And to the rights of women and minorities, you know, he's fairly outspoken, saying about black women, specifically Joy Reid, Michelle Obama, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, quote, "You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You have to go and steal a white person's slot to be taken somewhat seriously." And then he added, "We made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the mid-1960s. And finally, with regard to guns, although 87% of Americans want reasonable gun control, Kirk was all in on the firearms. It's the solution to kids being killed by guns is more guns. So the question, how does doubling down on low taxes for the morbidly rich, keeping our healthcare for profit, withholding higher education funding, gutting unions, increasing the number of guns, and trash talking women and women and minorities, how does that make America come back?
Yeah, so they have made a martyr out of this guy. All right, Captain Kirk. All right, CK. But he was for the rich. At the end of the day, he was for the rich. And this is the line that's being drawn, okay, in society, is the rich and the poor. Okay? As if you're fighting, if you're mad at the left, all right, and that's what the rich have done. They created these ideologies for you people to fight, while they continue to set up a digital prison all around you, while they continue to do a money grab and take all the wealth all around you. Okay, and you're mad at the left. You're mad at niggas in Chicago. All right, which these niggas are a problem, but these niggas are not the problem. Okay, and the problem, which is the elites, the super rich of Esau, Edom, created everything that you complain about. Okay, everything that you can complain about, these niggas created, they financed it, they glorified it. Okay, they made it a culture. Okay, and then they point the finger in all these different directions except them. Okay, and this is what the prophets are for, man. So through the spirit of Yahweh Shem Al Shai. So let's go from there. So let's understand. All right, let's go into what he was speaking on. So first let's start off with FDR, okay, and some of his policies. All right, because I asked the chat, I said President Roosevelt's policies that helped create the American middle class. It says Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR, policies during New Deal era, 1933 to 1939, were instrumental in laying the foundation of the American middle class, especially after the Great Depression. His reforms helped establish economic security, labor protections, and social safety nets, all essential ingredients in building a stable and prosperous middle class in the 20th century. All right, it says here are key FDR policies that help create and expand the American middle class. Social Security Act. All right, all this is doing FDR. Anything that benefits, all right, the people in any type of way is a remnant of what FDR did during the New Deal. Okay, and these are the things that Reagan, from the time of Reagan until the time we are now with Trump, have been stripped away. Okay, but anything that's any benefit, all right, to anyone in this society from the government, okay, is a remnant of what's left from the New Deal era, the time of Roosevelt. Okay, so you have the Social Security Act 1935, create a system of retirement pensions for workers aged 65 and older, introduce unemployment insurance. All right, you get unemployment and aid for the disabled and families with dependent children. Okay, so you have the Social Security, your unemployment, you can draw that down, you know, all that was under the New Deal. It says protected workers' rights to form unions, collectively bargain, and strike. Establish the National Labor Relations Board to enforce labor rights, strengthen labor's. All right, it said why it mattered because it strengthened labor's ability to demand better wages, benefits, and working conditions. Contributed to the contributed to the post-war rise in union membership, which helped grow a well-paid working class. Okay, so laborers had leverage. Okay, when it came to wages, when it came to benefits and working conditions, all this was established under FDR, the New Deal. It says what it did. It says it established a federal minimum wage. Okay, so the concept of the minimum wage, which the minimum wage, all right, was calculated by the cost of living. So no matter, if you was employed, okay, you will have enough, okay, to cover the cost of living. Just being employed alone, you could cover the cost of living. Okay, that's what the minimum wage was set up for. Okay, which it did that, but it disintegrated as time went on, and as more corruption crept into, all right, the Oval Office. It says, which all, they've all, not saying that these Edomites were just these righteous. Okay, because see, Jake still, even under these things, Jake was still being blackballed. I got another video to do to show how even when all this was going on, these things were mainly set up for Edomites, for Edomite privilege. Because you had some Edomites that wanted to look out for other Edomites, okay, the rest of Edom, and then you had some Edomites like, nah, nigga, we gonna hoard this to ourselves. Okay, so from Franklin D. Roosevelt, okay, FDR, you had certain Edomites in politics that, will look out, for the middle class Edomites, set up policies that would benefit the middle class Edomites, okay, because these policies wasn't for, to benefit Jake. Jake called hell like Jake, this, you still had so much segregation and all these different things, which, I say we'll go into that documentary. So Jake, he gonna break it down because of why this is happening for Esau. Jake was still able to be amongst themselves and thrive. Even with the odds against them. But the devil. So going back into it, because all these devils, these presidents, and just believe they Freemasons and they was into the secret societies and different things, but they be divided on what to do with the middle class. You have Edomites, they'd be like, look, damn them niggas, let's hoard everything to ourselves. And then you have those that want to look out, for the middle class. So that's where clashing in politics will happen. But now it's to the point to where all of them, Republican, Democrat, whatever, senators, everybody is all about enriching themselves, So it says the Fair Labor Standards Act established the first federal minimum wage, all right, set the 40-hour work week and rules for overtime pay, restricted child labor, so the time and a half, that you would get, that came from the New Deal. Okay, it said ensuring a basic standard of living for workers, created a norm of full-time work with fair compensation, a key part of the middle class life. Okay, it says public works program, the works progress, all right, administration employed millions in building roads, bridges, schools, and parks. The civilian conservation corps, all right, gave jobs to young men in conservation projects. The public Works Administration funded large infrastructure projects. So this was when the government, would employ, millions of people, for these big government projects. Okay, so they just created employment. Okay, with all this fuel, this was just money being pumped into the middle class. All right, so you had a time when money was being pumped from the government into the middle class. People's taxes actually worked for them, but that was mainly all right for Esau. Okay, um, why they matter has injected income into working class families during the Depression, created long-term public infrastructure that supported economic growth, normalized the idea of government investment in job creation. Okay, so it was a time when the government actually invested into its people. They reinvested the tax money paid by the people back into the people. Okay, and you had a thriving middle class. Now, when you jump up, all right, so I asked it, all right, can you link policies of Reagan, okay, that set the stage for Donald Trump today? All right, and it says here are several policies and philosophical legacies from Ronald Reagan that set the stage for aspects of Donald Trump's presidency. Okay, this was in 81. You see? So this is 44, 45 years, okay, of corporate takeover, man. It said what Trump did and does draws on, responds to, or is made possible in part by what Reagan started. Okay, so you go down, okay, it says key policies, okay, and legacy. It says Reagan, okay, push major tax cuts, especially via the Economic Recovery Tax, all right, Act of 1981, aiming to reduce marginal taxes, stimulate investment, and grow economy via incentives for capital creation. These cuts also included reduction of corporate tax rates, the rich, okay, and simplification of brackets. So Reagan came in giving corporations, okay, tax breaks, okay, and then you go into what deregulation. Reagan significantly reduced regulatory burdens on businesses, okay. So just like Trump is deregulating, for AI to come in, all right. Well, Reagan started to deregulate, you know, uh, these different government entities that was over these businesses, all right, making sure that they was compliant, to environment, that they was compliant, to certain wages, that they was compliant to working conditions. Okay. Reagan started to deregulate, which gave these business, all right, more leeway to what cut corners. Okay. It says especially energy regulation. It says wellhead oil and gas pricing, wholesale electricity market, and environmental regulation. He also cut agency budgets. All right. So Reagan, he began to diminish, okay, the government, the different government agencies and offices. All right. The different government agencies that was supposed to regulate big business, just like Trump did with Doge. Okay, what did Doge come in doing? They started to diminish the government and make more way for what? Corporate takeover. So this corporate takeover began with Reagan. Okay, he began slashing, the government during his era. It says and restricting how government agents enforce rules. He began to take power away from the government, okay, and give more power to corporation. While Reagan increased defense spending dramatically, he also pushed to cut non-defense domestic spending, especially those part of government seen as social welfare or regulatory outreach. For example, in Reagan era, many programs or their expansion were moderated and welfare programs were targeted and retrenchment, okay, or stricter oversight. Okay, so he came in slashing, putting more towards military. Okay, tax breaks for big businesses. Okay, deregulated, so big business wasn't had to deal with the regulations of government. Okay, and this is where the corporate takeover really began. All right, and it says Reagan era conservative emphasis expanding presidential power. Okay, isn't Trump expanding his presidential power and doing things that he's not, authorized to do? Okay, this is what Reagan was on, and reducing checks on that power and how regulations are implemented, how administrative states act. This helps set up later administrations to invoke executive orders, reinterpret regulatory leeway, and set broader power to shape federal agencies, man. All right, and we're seeing Trump, okay, do the same thing to where the power of government resides in the executive branch, which is the branch of the president. Okay, it says tough stance on law and order. This don't sound familiar. Okay, war on drugs. Okay, which the war on drugs is war on who? A war on Jake. Okay, so now what is Trump saying? Well, it's a war on crime. Okay, which is a war on Jake. Okay, it said Reagan escalated enforcement on drug offenses, increased penalties, and increased funding for criminal justice. The rhetoric and political position of law and order gained strength. Okay, and it wasn't just Republicans. Okay, that was on this, man, because you had on the Clinton, you had the three strikes. Okay, when Biden was senator, you had the crime bill. Okay, and it was all a war on the tribes, man. Okay, so when you get to this Reagan era, all right, this is where you see a corporate takeover and a separation of the rich and the poor. Okay, because that's when that separation really began to take off. All right, in the early '80s. All right, into the time that we in now. Okay, so if you like I say, if you Edomites, okay, are still jumping around saying "Make America Great Again," all right, you're behind. You don't know the play. You're not included. Okay, in this this new system. Okay, so let's go here. Let's get there in the book of James. All right, the scriptures go into these things. Let's go here to the book of James. All right. All right. This is the book of James, chapter 5, verse 1. It says, Go to now, ye rich man, weep and howl for your misery that shall come upon you. Okay. So Yahweh Shema Shai, okay, understands exactly what's going on. Okay, and there's a judgment for these devils. Because see, the super rich, the elite of Esau Edom, they think that they finna sidestep judgment. No. Okay. The Lord has them pinned down, man. Okay. The Lord has them in the trick bag. You see, it says your riches are corrupted and your garments are moth eaten. Okay. So this man has gotten wealth through what? Corruption. Matter of fact, my brother can put that in Sirach 10 and 8. Okay. So this man has corrupted all these systems of government to enrich himself and to oppress everybody, man. Okay? And it says, your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you. Okay? The rust of them, man. This man just has old wealth put up. While people are starving, he's just constantly accumulating, putting wealth on wealth. Okay? The infrastructure of the earth is falling apart, and this man is just putting wealth on top of wealth, man. The only thing he has money for is war. Okay, and AI. That's the only thing that he spares no expense on. Okay? But this man has neglected a lot of parts, okay, of his kingdom. Okay, and he has just hoarded up wealth to himself, and that's a witness against him, man. Okay? It says, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire, you have heaped treasures together for the last days, because he's investing what into this new world order, this AI and war. Okay. You see, it says, "Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, mainly Jake, which is of you, kept back by fraud." Okay, so he's not a fair paymaster, man. Okay, all this labor, because capitalism is about the small percentage. Okay, the 1%. Okay, benefiting off the labor of everyone else, the other 99. Okay, that's what capitalism is geared towards, man. Okay, and it says, "Which of you was kept by fraud cried, and the cries of them have reached and entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth," man. So this shows you that this is the elect that will be crying out, okay, in these times, man, against this wicked kingdom, okay, this wicked empire, Esau, Edom. Okay, it says, "You have lived in pleasure on the earth, and being wanton, which is undisciplined, you have nourished your hearts as in the day of slaughter." So ultimately, okay, this devil, the Lord has allowed this devil, to get fatted for the slaughter, man. Okay, so this man has enriched himself just to be spoiled. Okay, it says, "You have condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you," man. Jake was able, because here it is. All right, Jake wasn't benefiting. See, Jake didn't benefit off the new era, policies until late in the game. Jake still had to get it out the mud. While these Edomites, was given, a highway, to the middle class, a smooth road to the middle class. Okay, Jake had to get it out the mud. You see, and Jake was not thinking about being militant against Esau, man. Jake was just trying to live, do their thing. You see, family, land, farm. Okay, but this man, he still came with the sword. To this day, he's just been, in attack mode against Jake. And Jake hasn't tried to raise up no coup against the devil in his kingdom, man. Okay, so the Lord got this devil mapped out, man. These are all charges against the elites, okay, in these times, man. Okay, but everything that they're heaping up just for the elect, all right, to spoil, man. Anything that these devils have of any value, okay, is gonna be translated unto us. Okay. Yeah, if you can get Sirach 10 and 8, Bob Rashad. Your brother can post that Sirach 10 and 8. But I'll get this. It said this is from the brother not GMS all in. 144 says, "A wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered." All right, and this is the exact opposite. We see of Esau Edom. His government is in chaos. Okay, it's divided. Okay, it's very unbalanced in how this man deals. Okay, it's like Scripture said, the Lord hates unjust balance, man. Okay, but this Sirach 10 and 8, the brother Anah GMS all in 144 says, "Because of unrighteous dealings, okay, and injuries and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another." Okay, so this is now we're in the translation of kingdoms, and the wealth that this man has hoarded up to himself, all that's gonna be translated, man. Okay, everything is going to be translated, all right, to the elect, beginning with Yahushua. Okay, so just want to get into that, man. It's a thing of rich and poor. This new world order is about, the few, all right, elite ruling over the few rich, super rich and wealthy elite ruling over the poor majority, man. Okay, a utopia for them, all right, and a dystopia for everyone else. So Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified. Till next time I say shalom, kwam yashala, abba soon, shalom.